Hi, everyone. I am going to share with you some information about the structure of your essay and how you can shape that to get to a conclusion that does something a little different than some of you might have done in the past. Now, this video is separate because I'm also going to talk about a different, way to structure your introduction so that you might get to a conclusion that doesn't just repeat everything you said in your essay. So you can look at the student sample and you can see in that sample that the writer brings us to a list of items that are connected to the use of social media. So we see a cause and effect relationship. Now, the list is there to guide the reader. Okay, so this is what the paper will be covering. And it is a safe style and it's logical. And so, what happens though when you use a list thesis is you kind of just, you can only be dedicated to the items in that list. So if you're comfortable doing that, fine. But I challenge you to take it a step further and trust that your reader will keep reading and find the reasons for the claim you're making. So some of you could just write the use of social media leads to the decline in mental health in teens. That's it. You don't need to tell me why, because I trust you will prove that as you go through your argument or as you write your paper, etc. So try it, try to see if you could just make that claim. And when someone can say, prove it, then you have an argument. So, what happens in a shorter paper? And especially a paper that's looking at fact, you don't really have a lot of space to explore things that are external to your argument. I mean, you only have 4 pages, right? But because it's a claim of fact and it has to do with a STEM based topic, rarely do we have things that are all the time when it comes to science. It could be true today, but in a week, we could find a new development or whatever it is and say, okay, our previous research was too limited. Therefore, we have to redefine this species as this. Now, what you can do to combat in this essay, what you can do to combat possibly what happened before is that you're in your conclusion, you had to repeat everything you said in your introduction, and they told you to just summarize what you said. But that's boring. And so, what you can do in this essay is even if you have a list thesis, even if you just have a straight up claim, the conclusion will be a moment to give a nod to the fact that not all the time, because again, if it's black and white, that might happen to some of you. But you do need to acknowledge the fact that there's limitations to the research you've done. There's limitations to the fact that, well, these are humans, and especially in the student sample, it's people. So people aren't always one thing or the other thing. It depends on all kinds of environmental factors. So in this essay, I thought, okay, when I read the thesis, oh no, the claim here is that it does that. But at least the author weaves through the essay that it doesn't happen all the time. And especially in the conclusion, the author really touches back on the fact that there are limitations to these things because some people use a lot of social media and they haven't had these declines. So that's what I encourage you to do in your conclusion. You can definitely begin with a reference to the thesis statement, but because your essay should have given readers like new or interesting ways to think about this topic, this fact, the concluding remarks should be a little bit more reflective. And what I mean by that is acknowledging the limitations or your own research process. Um, Sometimes you can't find the evidence you need, and sometimes things seem a little bit maybe biased by researchers. But the conclusion is an appropriate place to do that, right? Talk about the limitations, but do so in a way where you don't need to go on and on and on. You can keep it pretty concise. But again, stay away from value. So even if teens use social media and it leads to this decline in mental health, yeah, that's really disturbing. But then at the end, don't say, and so stay off social media or, change the ways you do things. You don't want to give this essay any value or advocate for change. So I encourage you to try something new in your conclusion and your introduction. But again, if you're comfortable with the list thesis, have it. But remember, it probably can't be all the time. And so even if it is, right? Even if it's questionable, the conclusion is a good place to explore those limitations. And that is a better way to structure your essay. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. And again, the student sample is not perfect by any means, but it is a safe way to look at a structure and how to logically move through a topic with good use of research. Um, and so if you feel like it helps you, great. If there's questionable areas for you and you're not doing the same thing that author did, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just safe. And I wanted you to have it as a model of how to integrate research, how to organize an essay. Again, not perfect, but it's something. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions via email or stop into office hours.